Shocking footage. Ukraine takes the war inside Russia. January 1, 2026. That is the headline that is absolutely grabbing everyone's attention as we kick off the new year.
Before we jump into this really extraordinary story, just a quick reminder for you. Subscribe to Defense Reports. It's your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest deep dive by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover the astonishing, almost unbelievable expansion of Ukraine's long-range drone strike campaign.
It's more than just an expansion, though. This is a complete strategic pivot. We are seeing Ukrainian drone strikes push deep, deep inside Russian territory.
And on a scale we haven't seen before.
An unprecedented scale. They're consistently targeting critical logistics hubs near Moscow, deep rear air bases, and now even Caspian sea oil platforms right at the turn of the new year. So our mission for you today is clear. We're going to analyze the sources and detail how Ukraine managed to achieve this. What is it? An explosive tenfold increase in deep strikes just in 2025 alone.
Right. And we'll dig into the highly secretive unit responsible, the first separate Unmanned Systems Center, and the new tech, the new leaps that made it all possible, like this thing called the Pelianitsia missile drone.
And we're going to dissect Operation Spiderweb. This one covert action just completely redefined what air superiority can mean in a modern war.
It's just staggering. It inflicted an estimated $7 billion in losses, damaged or destroyed 41 strategic Russian aircraft, including, their vital Tu-95 bombers.
And here's the thing that really defines what 2026 is going to look like. We have insights from the actual commander of this unit, and he believes that a mass drone attack, we're talking 1,000 units hitting Russia in a single night, is coming quite soon.
That's the threat level we're now dealing with. It's a whole new ballgame.
So let's unpack this strategic shift. Russia spent most of 2025 intensifying its own drone campaign against Ukrainian cities. But the counter-response was different.
It was strategic, and it was dramatically scaled up. By the autumn of 2025, Ukraine's deep strikes inside Russia had jumped 10 times over the previous year, a tenfold increase.
What's fascinating to me here is how targeted this all is. It's not just a scattershot approach.
No, not at all. This is highly controlled. The entire operation is spearheaded by one single unit, the newly expanded first separate Unmanned Systems Center.
So they're the nerve center for all of them.
They are. They're responsible for, 80 to 90% of all deep strikes hitting Russia's rear areas?
That level of centralization, it suggests incredible control, but must also be an incredible risk. Our sources say their operational security is just extreme.
So it has to be. They're launching from constantly changing, long-abandoned locations, total secrecy.
How does one commander keep a grip on that kind of coordination across such huge distances?
Well, that structure is led by a man known only by his call sign, Charlie. He's an officer with deep combat experience, a graduate with honors who was in the thick of it at Donetsk Airport way back in 2014. He's an expert in explosives and special ops.
So you have a traditional special forces mind now leading a high-tech drone war. That's quite a transition.
It is, and it says everything about his mindset. His core motivation is to shift those high-risk sabotage tasks, the ones that cost soldiers' lives, onto technology.
Using unmanned systems to save his people.
Exactly. He is completely convinced that for Ukraine to win, this war has to be fought with the evolution of unmanned systems. And what's interesting is, despite being this high-level commander, he makes it a point to be there on the launch missions.
Why? Why the need to be physically present?
He says he needs to understand the real needs, the real bottlenecks his soldiers are facing. You can't get that from a spreadsheet. And that grassroots connection, it informs his entire strategy. These operations are executed in systematic waves linked to very specific long-term military objectives. They've moved way beyond just random targets of opportunity.
So once they knew they could reliably get past Russian air defenses, the question became, what's the biggest target? What gives the maximum strategic return?
Precisely. And that led directly to their first major wave of operations, which kicked off in the summer and fall of 2024.
And this wave focused squarely on Russia's main artillery arsenals, these massive strategic reserves from the Soviet days.
That's it. The goal was to take away the sheer volume of fire that Russia's army depends on. And we saw immediate success.
I remember the reports. The destruction of several arsenals in September 2024. The big one was Toropets in the Tver region.
Huge. Experts assess that the Toropets facility alone held 2 to 4 months of ammunition stocks.
And we're not just talking about shells.
No, no, this was everything. Grad systems, strategic missile stocks for S-300s, S-400s, Iskanders, even the North Korean KN-23s they've been using.
It's a logistical nightmare for them, hitting both their ground artillery and their air defense missiles at the same time. That forces a much deeper, more painful restructuring.
It does. It's not just a quick resupply issue anymore. Which brings us to the second phase, targeting aviation in August 2024.
And the tempo here was key, right? To hit them fast before they could adapt.
Concentrate the attacks. Quick, decisive. We saw strikes hitting major fighter bases one after another. Kalino, Savitsleka, Borisogledsk, and Baltimore.
And this wasn't happening in a vacuum. These attacks happened at the exact same time Ukraine was conducting that offensive in the Kursk region.
Classic strategic synergy. You create chaos and physical destruction hundreds of kilometers away while you open up a new threat on the front line. It forces this disorienting, costly restructuring right when Russia needs stability the most.
Which brings us to now, the third major phase, focused squarely on Russia's Achilles heel, its oil industry.
And it's been relentless, running from late 2025 right into the new year. November saw the most refinery attacks since the entire war began.
So why oil? Why is that the Achilles heel compared to, say, a tank factory?
Two critical reasons. First, these oil facilities were just less protected. They were assumed to be safe because they're so deep inside Russia.
Complacency.
You could say that. And second, and this is the real long-term strategic play damage to a complex refinery unit, often requires specialized Western equipment to fix. Valves, catalysts, pumps.
Which they can't get anymore because of sanctions.
Exactly. So hitting an oil depot isn't just about destroying fuel for a week. It's about inflicting permanent, sanction-amplified damage that can't be easily fixed.
We saw that happen with the New Year's strikes.
Absolutely. The strikes on December 31st and January 1st were actually done by a different unit, the SBU's Alpha Special Ops, which just shows how multi-layered this campaign is.
And they hit what? The temp oil depot north of Moscow.
Yes, in Rybinsk, a huge logistics hub. And the Tuapse refinery on the Black Sea coast. They even hit oil platforms out in the Caspian Sea.
That geographic reach is just massive. And SBU sources are on the record saying this systemic campaign will continue into 2026.
And its success is tied directly to Ukraine's own technological transformation. The shift to domestic manufacturing has been key.
Right. Charlie's unit, they confirmed that something like 90% of the long-range drones they use are now domestically produced.
Yes, models like the N-196 Ludi. And the scale of production is it's astonishing. The plan for 2026 is to produce at least 30,000 long-range drones. This is an industrial revolution born out of necessity.
And that capacity is what gave us Operation Spiderweb back in June 2025. That was the ultimate showcase of this innovation.
An unprecedented covert action. They hit 5 Russian air bases simultaneously across the entire country.
And the range is the key detail here. Some of these targets were over 4,000 kilometers away. Belaya Air Base in Siberia. How do you even guide a drone that far?
Well, this is the technical leap. These weren't your standard cruise missiles. The innovation was modifying FPV drones, which are typically very short-range weapons for long-range, semi-autonomous flight.
So how do they do it?
They essentially trade the direct radio link for heavy fuel loads and relied almost entirely on AI-driven navigation systems, GPS or inertial. It makes them pretty much immune to most tactical jamming.
A staggering modification. And the launch mechanism was just as innovative.
It had to be. These drones were smuggled deep inside Russia and launched from concealed positions. We're talking remote-controlled trucks, mobile cabins, already deployed inside Russian territory.
So the air defenses are looking for threats from the border, but the attack is coming from within.
Precisely. They were completely overwhelmed, and the result of that one night, 41 strategic aircraft. Gone, damaged or destroyed. 295s, 222 M3s, priceless A-50 surveillance planes.
$7 billion in estimated losses from one operation. It just shatters that whole idea of strategic depth.
And it's not just drones. Ukraine also unveiled a whole new class of weapon designed specifically to get around Western restrictions on deep strikes, the Palyanitsia.
Palyanitsia. Hearth-baked bread is that word they use as a shibboleth, right? Hard for Russian speakers to pronounce.
A perfect name for a weapon designed to hit the Russian rear. It's a turbojet drone missile, a sort of new category of weapon.
And the specs are impressive.
They are. The latest upgrade from September 2025 lists a 320-kilogram mass, a 100-kilo warhead, and it travels at 900 kilometers per hour. The operational range is 650 kilometers. but hypothetically, it could go much, much further.
But the real game changer here is the economics. A Western cruise missile can cost $1 million, maybe more.
Right. The estimates for a Pelionici unit are as low as $50,000 to $100,000.
Wow.
So the cost effectiveness, the return on investment, it's immense. And it fundamentally changes the economic calculus of this war. Lithuania saw that potential. They've already committed 10 million euro to its production.
Okay, so as Ukraine is extending its reach like this, we have to acknowledge what's happening on the front lines, which remains incredibly difficult.
That's the critical other half of the picture. Deep strikes are a huge success, but Russia did increase its average rate of advance in 2025. They seized over 4,800 square kilometers.
Oh, they adapted their tactics.
They did. They moved away from those big, vulnerable armored columns and now rely on small, specialized assault groups, probing, infiltrating.
And they made some tech gains of their own.
They did. The drone advantage, it sort of tilted back towards Moscow in 2025 for a bit. They scaled up production of fiber optic drones, which are very hard to jam.
And they started using those mothership drones, right?
Yes, larger aircraft that deploy swarms of smaller FPVs. It improved their own battlefield air interdiction, their BAI, hitting targets behind Ukrainian lines.
Which brings us to the political maneuvering.
Yeah.
After these successful deep strikes, Putin ordered an expansion of the buffer zone in Sumy and Kharkiv.
Right. General Gerasimov claimed they took 950 square kilometers to, quote, protect Belgorod and Kursk. But President Zelensky called the plans mad, a clear pretext for deeper land grabs.
And that clash of narratives just exploded around the new year. Russia made this huge claim on December 28th and 29th that a mass drone launch targeted Putin's own residence in Novgorod.
91 drones, they claimed. And they immediately used it to justify hardening their negotiation stance, demanding capitulation.
But there's a verification check here.
A very important one. Major Western intelligence sources, like ISW, found the Kremlin's claims unpersuasive.
Meaning
they lacked all the standard corroborating evidence. There was no debris footage, no immediate local reports, nothing you'd expect to see after a real strike of that magnitude. It just didn't add up.
And on the other side, Russia alleged a Ukrainian strike in occupied Korly in the Kherson region killed 24 people during New Year celebrations.
Which we have to report as an unverified Russian assertion, one they immediately branded a war crime.
So what stands out from all this, then, is that the strategic landscape is just completely changing. Ukraine is now running its own very sophisticated battlefield air interdiction campaign.
It's directly paralleling Russia's efforts, but you could argue it has a higher strategic impact because of the targets they're choosing.
We're seeing routine strikes on Russian military and energy targets at those operational depths, 25 to 100 kilometers behind the front. Rovinki Oil Depot, Melitopol substations.
All recent examples. And it all ties back to the economics. Low-cost Ukrainian drones and missiles are taking out billion-dollar Russian strategic assets. That transformative economic shift means Ukraine can sustain these high-impact operations for a tiny fraction of what it costs Russia to defend against them.
Which sets a very, very kinetic tone for 2026. Let's bring it back to that commander, Charlie. His provocative thought really defines the future threat here.
It does. He warned that a night when 1,000 Ukrainian drones attack Russia could come quite soon.
A saturation attack, built on cheap, domestically produced technology that traditional air defenses just can't cope with.
Right. The depth of Russia is no longer a defense. It's just more territory they have to try and cover.
So what does all this mean for you as you're trying to understand the strategy going forward? The true value here might not just be the physical damage to a refinery or a bomber, though that is obviously very important.
I think the biggest strategic win is the mandatory redistribution of Russia's air defenses.
Explain that.
They're being forced to pull their best systems away from the front lines, away from their supply routes, and spread them thin across this vast territory they previously assumed was safe.
From Siberia to the Caspian Sea.
Exactly. And that creates new vulnerabilities, new operational opportunities for Ukrainian forces much closer to the front. Moscow now has to worry about defending Moscow, and that changes the entire calculus of the war.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Remember to subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.